And good afternoon. It is Ryan Belmore here, owner and publisher of What's Up Noop. And we are wrapping up our conversations with the candidates today. Over the last several weeks, we've had dozens upon dozens of interviews with local and statewide candidates. And we are wrapping up our conversations right back in Newport with Representative Lauren Carson. Hi, Rep. How are you?
Good morning. How are you, Ryan? Good to see you.
Nice to see you as well. We've waited so long to have you on because we were getting to all the contested races, but now you are an uncontested candidate, District 75, which is Newport, for those that aren't following along. A couple quick programming notes. If people want to early vote, you have until Monday. Of course, you can vote in person on Tuesday. You visit vote.ri.gov. You can see your sample ballot, all the candidates, and all of that. Rep. Carson, what made you back in June or before that decide that you wanted to do another term?
Well, I think one of the key reasons that I wanted to run for another term was because in this session that we're finishing up now, the 2021-22 session, the tone of the room has changed dramatically under the leadership of Speaker Shekarchi. He has really opened up the floor for debate. He has really given many of the women leadership positions more than we've ever had before. He has really encouraged all the members to bring all the bills that they want to him, to the committees, really explore all options. Everything's on the table, and the whole climate of the room has changed. And I feel much more productive there. And I feel like my opinion actually matters in the room more than it did under the previous leadership. So that's the reason that I'm running again.
And Rep. Carson, why don't you remind people about how long you have been representing Newport?
Sure. I ran my first time I ran was in 2014. In that particular race, I ran in a primary against the incumbent, and I won that race. That year, I had no general. So following my primary, I was elected to the House in District 75. 2 years later, I had a contested race against a Republican. It was a challenging race, and I did win that, I think, like about 56 to 44. The following year, 2018, I was uncontested again, like this year. And then in 2020, I had an opponent, and I won that race 70% to 30. So I've had three uncontested generals, basically. I've been very fortunate. I feel very connected to my constituents. I think I'm hitting the high notes that they want me to work on, and really looking forward to going back in January, first Tuesday in January.
What do you think, uncontested and nobody challenging you means? It means that you're doing the greatest job possible. How do you, when you see back in June that nobody has signed up on the other side or as a Democrat to run against you, how do you take that?
Well, I kind of feel a little guilty, like everybody's out there campaigning and I'm not out there campaigning, and I'm like, gee, what else should I be doing? And I did do a lot. I did communicate with my constituents, and I feel like I've been out there attending a lot of events since June. Newport had a very busy summer. Some of my constituents tell me, well, who's going to run against you? So that's a compliment, I guess. So I guess I take it as a signal that I'm hitting all the buttons for my constituents and working on things that they care about. So very flattered and grateful and hardworking and ready to go.
If your bio is right on the Rhode Island General Assembly website, you are Deputy Majority Leader, Second Vice Chair of the House Innovation, Internet, and Technology Committee, member of the House Environment and Natural Resources Committee, member of the House Oversight Committee, and member of the House Small Business Committee. Is that all of them? That's a lot of them.
All of them. Oversight doesn't hear legislation. The role of oversight is to really dig into the way government is functioning, and we don't really meet on a regular basis. We meet like maybe once a month. We don't hear bills. The workload there is very different than committees where we hear bills. Small business meets maybe twice a month. And the Internet and Broadband Committee was actually a brand new committee that Speaker Shekarchi started and in this session. And outgoing Representative Ruggiero was the successful chair of that in the first session that we had that committee. And it was sort of new, so we were a little bit on a startup mode, just starting to really send bills there. And clearly the most active committee for me was environment, where we have a very active team and we do meet weekly, and there's a lot of bills on environment. So, around December, I will get a note from the leadership of the House. They will ask me what committees I want to be on. And I've been toying with the idea of going on the Rules Committee. I have a few ideas about rules and about the way that the room functions. So, and the Rules Committee only meets at the beginning of the session to sort of make any changes to the operational rules for the rest of the session. So that's not a very heavy commitment. It's very active, say, in January and February, and then it's not active after that very much at all. So I may ask to go on rules. I have a few ideas that I might want to pursue there.
On two of them, I've been surprised. The Environment and Natural Resources Committee, I think I've read and certainly I've seen a lot more press releases, but I feel like it was one of the biggest sessions on that front.
Yes, it was. Well, we have a very committed pro-environment team on the House Environment Committee. The chairman, Chairman Bennett out of Warwick, I've heard him say to people, he's been chair there, I don't know, about 4 or 6 years, that it's really the strongest team he's ever had. And many of the bills that passed were from the members of the committee. One of the big things that we had been working on was PFAS, which is that plastic contaminant that's in so many things, including firefighter foam, and it's on Teflon frying pans, and it's on some clothes and in water. And that was a really big issue that we wanted to tackle. And we did deal with that this legislative session. It's not over by any stretch of the imagination, but we've begun the framework for really identifying where PFAS is located and trying to limit exposure to it. There's actually money in the infrastructure bill, which was passed about a year ago, to work on additional nationally, to work additionally to identify sources of PFAS. So that's a big one. That's a real big one. One of the challenges in the House Environment Committee has been dealing with plastic. We're really sort of at a stalemate on dealing with plastic, which is a big frustration for the members as well as the public. We work to try to ban nips, the little bottles that alcohol comes in sort of in bite-sized servings. They're all over the state. We had a lot of pushback from the liquor stores on that. We did ban plastic bags, which of course Newport had done years ago. And there were like about 20 towns that had passed municipal ordinances to ban plastic bags. Now we have that statewide. So that's a good thing. We have uniformity now across the state. There are other issues. There's a bottle bill that came back this year that didn't really move. Again, we're at a stalemate with the industry. And I don't really know where that issue is going to go, to tell you the truth. But I know that some of the members that have been on that committee longer than I have are very frustrated with that. We have to make some change in the way we handle plastics. There's just so much of it. When the public comes and testifies on these bills, there are really well-intended, terrific volunteers right here on Aquidneck Island that go out and they collect tons of plastic bottles. So we're really relying on the public to clean this plastic out of the environment. There's no real clear solution on the horizon for that in terms of managing it. So that I'm sure will be back next year. I'm sure of that.
Back to the House Innovation, Internet, and Technology Committee in broadband. I have been surprised, speaking to so many candidates, how much broadband has been brought up. Just the other day, I had Lieutenant Governor Sabina Matos on, and it was one of her priorities. The top 3 priorities was broadband access. Broadband has really come far into the front of the table in discussion over the last couple of years.
Yeah, it has. I was just with some members of the Cox staff last week, and your viewers may or may not know that they're putting fiber on completely on this island. So and they hope to have that done by a year from December. And that would be dependent on the supply chain and all the other issues that we see in the economy, which may disrupt the installation of the fiber. So that should be a step in the right direction. Newport is Aquidneck Island's at the tail end of so many things, the tail end of the internet, the tail end of gas coming down, the tail end of electric, so this is a good start to get the fiber on the island, clearly.
Looking back over the last couple of years, what are some of the accomplishments that you're most proud of, and what are a couple that you wish would have gathered enough support to get across the finish line?
Oh, that's an easy one. I had a terrific phone call this morning with some two gentlemen who lead what's called the Rhode Island Recycling Clubs, and they go into schools and they encourage recycling and composting. And I passed a bill that a lot of people don't know about last year, which required schools to compost and to recycle. I mean, it's a state law. Everybody must be recycling and composting. And I was concerned particularly about the food that is thrown away, because there are so many hungry people in Rhode Island, and we could be capturing some of the food that's not being used or eaten in schools. According to Department of Health regulations, there are certain types of food that could be taken to food banks, like apples, oranges, bananas, milk, granola bars. And I met with the bill went into the law went into effect January 1st of this year. And these gentlemen that are organizing in the schools told me that they're diverting 2,500 tons from the landfill as the result of my bill. That is a tremendous amount of waste that they're diverting. They said much of the waste is in the grammar schools. Now, I put this bill in largely at the request of the Newport Energy and Environment Commission, because about 5 years ago, they did a study on the waste in Pell School. And in one day, there was 35, if I remember correctly, there was about 35 pounds of food that was actually could go to a food bank. This food that met the Department of Health regulations that could really be feeding hungry people. One day, one school. And if you think about it, we're paying for the meals. Taxpayers are paying for it. Kids aren't eating it. We're trucking it to the landfill and we're paying for that, and people are going hungry. So I just had that conversation this morning with these gentlemen, and they're aggressively they're going to start looking at the cost savings of not taking this food to Rhode Island Resource Recovery. There will be a savings on, that kind of garbage pickup. They told me in one school, they went from 19 bags of garbage a week to 3. Because of their increased recycling and composting. So I just learned that today. So I was very proud of that. I think that, there's been so many things that I've done over the years. Sometimes I even forget what they all are, to tell you the truth. I mean, this year I was at the request of the city council. I did pass a resolution, or it was a law, I guess, permitting them to change the taxes in Newport for the residents and non-residents, which I know was a really big issue for Newporters, given real estate in the city, and so many dark houses, and how this is all fitting together. I also created the statewide third-party hosting registry, better known as like an Airbnb listing, because so many of these houses are legitimate businesses, and just like other businesses, they need to register with an appropriate agency in the state. In this case, they're registering with, not with Commerce, they're registering with the Department of Business Regulation. And that is open. That registration is happening now for those properties. With the help of Dawn Oyer, our senator on the Senate side, we passed the Act on Climate, which was probably the most significant piece of environmental legislation in about 20 years, setting enforceable goals for carbon reduction in the state of Rhode Island. So these are things Newporters care about. They care about real estate in the city, what's happening with real estate. They care about their taxes. They care about the environment. So I feel like I'm hitting the mark on a lot of things. One thing that I'm very interested in is I did introduce a bill this year. It did not pass, and that's fine. I knew it wouldn't. It started the conversation. I did it at the request of the Senior Center Directors Association, of which, of course, Carmela Gear is our Senior Center Director at the King House. And what we'd like to see happen is to create a cabinet-level position for healthy aging. We had a senior citizen healthy aging cabinet-level organization. And then it got demoted to a division on aging. And then it got demoted to an office on aging, right at the time when most of the people in this country increasingly are over 65. And the result of that sort of downsizing of that office has also caused all the services for senior centers for senior citizens and healthy aging to be spread across a lot of departments. And so what we'd like to do is really consolidate all of those services for seniors, the grant making for the communities that send money on aging services, the transportation, the meals, all health, all that stuff. Let's bring it back under one cabinet level position. As we approach a time when the baby boomers are really going to be hitting their stride as older Americans. So that's something that I'm very interested in for next year. And I believe the governor is going to put something in his budget. He did say that he was going to put it in his budget at an event in August. So I'm really hopeful that we can make some progress on that. I've also been working for several years to create an ombudsman for special education, which would be an independent office of the Department of Education that would be a resource to families and school districts to really ensure that special needs students are getting what they're entitled to in our school districts across the state. So those are two of my big bills this year. I have more. I don't know how much you want to hear, but I got a few more.
You have plenty of them. If you were to say your priority in the next session is?
The aging bill and the ombudsman bill, I think, are the two right now. I do have a list that I'm working on, and a few things are popping up. Sometimes we, and myself particularly, write bills on very esoteric things that are very narrow and very specific. And sometimes they're big, broad things like Act on Climate or like a cabinet level position. I mean, there is also the follow-up to the CRMC Study Commission, the Coastal Resource Management Council, that Representative Ruggiero chaired. I sat on that commission, and she left her seat in order to run for lieutenant governor. And there's work to be done there. And that's obviously harbor waterfront issues are important, not only for Newporters, but to our economy and the real estate development industry and public access and all of those issues. I have water on 3 sides of my district. So it's a very access, CRMC related issues are important. So I'm going to meet with Representative Ruggiero in a couple of weeks and look at her bills, because she's done some terrific things and she's not going to be there anymore. So I'm meeting with her, with Representative Courtvan from Portsmouth, to see what of her bills we can actually, continue the work on that she has started. So that's another area that I'm going to do a little bit of work in the next couple of weeks, because we can start writing bills around the 20th of November. Oh. That's when Ledge Council, the lawyers that draft our bills, are available to us. So sometime in the month of December, I will start meeting with the attorneys, going over last year's bills that didn't pass, pulling them up. And then we have until around the 3rd or 4th week of February to introduce bills. So between Thanksgiving and the end of February, I'm pretty busy writing bills. It's sort of like writing term papers, meeting with lawyers, going over the language. And then after that, according to the House rules, we can introduce 3 more bills. So we have to be strategic in which ones you introduce first, sort of the easier ones with the more simplified language. And then the last 3 I usually save for larger bills, heavier lifts that require more work. But one last thing on that, Ryan. At any point in time, I can introduce a municipal bill. So if Newport comes to me with 20 bills in April, I can introduce all of them. There's no limitation on municipal bills.
Okay. So now is the time to get a hold of you if somebody thinks
has
something.
An idea.
Yes.
Right. Yep.
One thing you mentioned I've just heard a lot about it from the candidates in Portsmouth, not so much in Middletown, nothing in Middletown, nothing in Newport. And just wondering, with all of your work on environment, how closely you're watching the Mayflower Winds line that wants to run somewhere through Portsmouth, around Portsmouth. Do you think that is something where the House or, you might have to get involved in?
Yeah, I don't know the answer to that. I was actually speaking to someone yesterday about it, a Portsmouth rep, and we were brainstorming it. I'm not super knowledgeable on that. I do know it's an issue up there, coming up the river and going on the shoreline. But, I had dinner with somebody last night, and I mentioned this to them, how there was a little bit of pushback on that. And they said there's already cables across the bay. This particular person that I had dinner with lives on Goat Island, and they told me that there's a cable that goes just south of Goat Island over to Jamestown, and that cable provides all the power to Jamestown from here. So the power must come like down from Fall River across to Jamestown, which I didn't know. So kind of the same thing, so I don't really know. I'm not that knowledgeable about this. I know folks are concerned up there, and we'll see how it all plays out with the public hearings.
I don't think the whole island will start making noise about it until they start seeing windmills go up, and then they'll realize that this has been going on for several years.
That's correct.
When we, how much are you supporting, advocating, watching what happens on question 4, the cannabis in Newport?
I haven't been watching that one that closely. I haven't heard, I've been out and about town a lot in the past couple of months. I haven't heard much chatter on that, to tell you the truth. In fact, I even forgot it was on the ballot, to tell you the truth. And when I was sort of reviewing the questions in my own mind or talking to people about them, I was like, oh yeah, there's a cannabis question too. So I don't really, I don't really know what to say about that. I understand the pros and cons. I haven't really figured out what I'm going to do on that one. I understand the concerns. I understand the concerns.
I think it will surprise that is among one of the questions that will surprise people when they turn over their ballot in Newport, as well as in Middletown. And then how much are
question
you?
5.
Question 5. Yeah, if I'm working my way down.
You heard of that? You heard of question 5?
Let's take a quick step back, because I imagine that you are in support of the 3 statewide questions, 1, 2, and 3.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. I've been over to the URI coastal campus. They definitely need the money. I mean, there's no doubt about that. The other one is the green bond, which always passes in Rhode Island between 70 and 80%. So I'm definitely in favor of that one. And what was the last one? I forget what the last one was.
I'm pulling it up, but while I pull that up, we can jump ahead. You represent Newport school region, this regional, whatever you want to call it. It's called regional school district on the ballot. So that's what I am going to call it, even though people have told me that you shouldn't use the word regionalization. Supporting, watching, advocating. What are you thinking on this one?
Well, I'll tell you, and on this one, I think I'm just a voter. I generally think that Rhode Island should be looking at ways to regionalize delivery of services. Sometimes when we write bills or pass bills, home rule is so strong in Rhode Island, which has served us in the past. And home rule is so strong that sometimes it makes it difficult for state legislators to legislate a policy statewide. So in general, I support regionalization. I supported it 3 years ago. I was at the meeting in Middletown that was contentious. I attended that meeting and watched and saw the way Middletown didn't want to participate in any kind of a conversation with us. I think that I am going to vote for it because I generally support the idea of regionalization. But let's look at what the folks are saying about the pros and cons, right? So one of the cons is that, are we just chasing the money? It's really not a bad idea to go after the money and get $80 million. I mean, we're not talking about $2 million. We're talking about a large chunk of money here. I also think that, there's been criticism of Middletown that they didn't want to work with us a couple of years ago. And now that they need the money, they want to work with us. Well, they've apologized in public. I mean, I know that, the town council there has publicly more than once apologized for their behavior. And I think we should acknowledge that. They said they acknowledged the way they behaved 3 years ago. They realized that they should have accepted the opportunity a few years ago. And I'm giving him a pass on that. I think that Paul Rodriguez has said it at least 3 times in public. And I think that the last thing is there's a concern about, well, there's 2 things. Was this rushed? Yeah, it was a little bit rushed, but we're under a deadline. That's a legitimate criticism. But the last thing is, like, where's the plan for the kids? There's 2 comments I have to that. One is RIDE is going to oversee any kind of effort to combine the 2 school administrations, and they're going to have standards. It's not just going to be like one school administrator in Newport and the town manager in Middletown that are going to be designing this. The Department of Education is going to be at the table, and they're going to make sure certain metrics are met in terms of the delivery of education to children. But the thing that I feel most strongly about, Newporters are not going to let their kids suffer. If this passes, all these wonderful advocates that are out there right now, they're still going to be advocating. We're not going to lose sight of the fact that we want the very best for our kids. So I'm optimistic. I felt all along, leave it to the voters. I don't know what's going to happen. There is a strong opposition to it at this point in time. It has to pass both municipalities. Quite frankly, I won't be surprised if it doesn't pass. But it's in the voters' hands now, and we'll see what happens.
I have to give you credit. I have interviewed about 40 people and have brought this up, and you gave the just most direct and most understandable response to all of the naysayers or all the not naysayers, but those who are trying to reject. I think sometimes people need to take the emotion out of it and look at the facts. Even when I've had both sides on, sometimes it gets emotional. And
yes, it did. I saw that.
If you just look at the facts, I think they should be having you go up there and speak on their behalf.
Well, I knew you were going to ask me this, and I this is how I have felt all along, and I did think about it because I said he's going to ask me about school regionalization. I know it, and I debated how to answer it because I don't want to alienate anyone with my opinion, but I'm one voter in this mix. It's going to be, and my opinion does carry strength. I realize I have to use it carefully. But we'll, as soon as I was asked to introduce it, which we had to introduce a piece of legislation in order to make this happen, I was like, leave it to the voters. This is a healthy debate going on in Newport right now, and I'm looking forward to the outcome.
And that is question 5. And just to go back, as I have the sample ballot up now that I found on vote.ri.gov. Number 1 was the URI Narragansett Bay campus. Number 2 is Rhode Island School Buildings.
Oh, School Buildings Act.
3 is Green Economy.
Yes, of course. I forgot. Yes, absolutely. Well, I'm for all 3 of them, obviously.
Yes. Rep, any other races in the state that you're closely watching besides all of them?
Well, watching the governor's race has really been a slug between the 2 of them. I mean, there was more news today, or more suggestions that the Republican gubernatorial candidate has been inappropriate. I saw it in today's Pro Joe, and and it's just really become a much a tougher race. I think McKee will win, but it's bordering on a dirty race a little bit, and it's been very interesting to watch that. It seems like at the other state races, I think that my former colleague Greg Amori is going to win, and he's great guy, thoughtful, patient, smart, really keyed in, terrific guy. In terms of other House races, there's a few of my colleagues that I've gone out and worked for because I don't have a race. I've been helping some folks. I'm going down to South County on Saturday to work with my colleague down there and do some outreach with her. But I've really been spending most of this election season getting ready for the next session. I have my list of bills already here that I'm working on, and I've been going to events 3 and 4 nights a week. And just, Newport's been a very busy place since the summer. It really has been. This summer, there would be weeks that I was out every single night, 7 nights a week. And I was pretty exhausted, actually. So that's really where I've been putting my energy, focusing more locally than on any statewide race.
I want to, maybe I will. The Republican candidate for governor is one of your constituents. Mm-hmm. Any efforts to sit down and chat or begin working together or anything like that?
No, I've met her maybe once in the spring at an event. It was an event actually for my special education ombudsman bill, and she came. It was a parents' event in Warwick. But no, I haven't met her at all. I mean, if she wins, then we have a new administration, and we have to figure out as a body how to work with them, so that'll present challenges if that happens, different challenges. But, it's happened before. We'll get through.
Back to Newport, the whole 3-season, I don't think it's a 3-season town anymore. It's a 4-season town. There are just so many events. I was just putting together what's going on this weekend. And there was just so much still going on.
Absolutely.
With all the events, activities, conferences, I imagine just like city council that, one of the things on your top of the mind is how to balance it all for Newport residents.
Right. Well, I think that's a challenge for the next city council, as a matter of fact. There's a lot of discussion on the literature coming from city council candidates about quality of life for Newporters. That does seem to be surfacing as an issue. And, Newport's a very dynamic place. There's no doubt about it. We have a strong reputation that attract on a variety of cultural, sporting activities, natural environment, boating, that attracts a wide variety of people. And that's good for business for the city of Newport. I think that there will be some steps that are taken. The city is working on a transportation plan, which is hopefully going to reduce traffic and minimize all the parking congestion. They are meeting on the property tax changes to year-round residents. So that's another good thing. So there are some things that we're trying to do, the city council's trying to do, that is really going to, make life a little bit easier for those of us that are here year round to enjoy the community as much as we do, but it is quiet in town. It's definitely quiet. I can drive down Bellevue Ave and get home, and there's a lot less cars on Bellevue Ave, and I can park downtown. So, for me, I think I grew up in Central Jersey along the shore. I was used to a seasonal lifestyle. I kind of like the seasonal lifestyle. I know that in the summer it's busy, it's crowded, there's a lot going on. And then come this time, right after Halloween, where you go into a restaurant, you see all your friends, so it's a seasonal lifestyle. And, that's the choice we make. And I think the city council is probably going to have some challenges. Several of the candidates are actually running on that issue, quality of life for Newporters.
Yeah. Rep, is there anything that we did not get to? Obviously, we could talk for hours, and we'll certainly have you back on when the session begins early next year. But is there anything we didn't get to today that you may have wanted to bring up?
I don't think so. I appreciate the opportunity to chat with you, Ryan. I think I touched on some things in the past and some things I'm looking forward to. I'm always available. I tell my constituents, sometimes constituents have to interact with either the Department of Taxation or the Department of Motor Vehicles, and the bureaucracy can be difficult for most people to navigate. And really what I want to say is call me first, because if there's an issue with the department, I can probably cut through the red tape in about 3 days. That would take the average person a month to find the right person. That I place a very high emphasis on that service to constituents. So you can find me online. Just Google Lauren Carson. My website will come up. My phone number's there. My email's there, and I'll help you cut through some red tape at any state level issue that any constituents may have.
Excellent. And let me ask you, Rep. Some of your colleagues must be a little bit jealous of all of these scenes in Showtime we got in Hocus Pocus 2.
Yes, they are. Well, there's also Gilded Age. Don't forget that.
That's
Gilded Age too, right? So,
Yeah.
and I've been behind the film credits. I think they work, actually. They work in Newport because there's a lot goes on. When they come to town, they eat here, they drink here, they buy gas here, they stay in hotels, so film credits are good for Newport.
Yeah, it was. I can't remember of a recent time where a movie showed so much of Newport.
Yes.
Yes. So it was great to see. So
it is.
Rep Carson, we thank you for
You're
joining
welcome.
us, and we will chat with you once the session gets underway here in a couple short months.
Yep, about 7 more weeks. January. I think January 3rd. That's when we're starting our session. So
excellent. Well, we will chat with you then.
Okay, take care. Thank you very much.
Right. That is Rep Lauren Carson, District 75, which is Newport, and she is asking you to fill in the bubble next to her name. She is running uncontested, and she represents Newport. That is our conversations with the candidates. Want to rewatch this one, watch or listen to any of the other conversations? You can find them all on whatsupnuke.com. Thanks for watching.